The good news is I don't have to do this alone, and I am thrilled to be co-hosting today with Nodine Ganji, membership liaison at Corporation Canada. Nodine works closely with our members to strengthen collaboration across the sector, and I couldn't ask for a better partner to host this celebration. Nodine, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nefa, and great to give voice you have out there. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Nodine Ganji. I am the member liaison at Corporation Canada. I am thrilled to be your co-host for this year's award ceremony, presented in collaboration with World University Service of Canada, also known as WUSC, and the trustees of the Lewis Perrinbam Award. And this week, as part of International Development Week, we celebrate Canadian leadership in advancing global cooperation under the theme Prosperity Through Partnership. So this theme reminds us that meaningful progress, whether eliminating poverty, addressing inequity, or promoting global well-being, depends on strong partnerships. And tonight, we recognize individuals and organizations who embody the spirit of collaboration and innovation. The 2025 awards introduce a renewed focus that is protecting civic space to enable international cooperation. So why does this matter? Well, civic space is the freedom to organize, advocate, and participate in public life. It is the foundation of inclusive cooperation and humanitarian action. Without it, partnerships cannot thrive and progress stalls. So this year's honorees are champions of civic action and inclusive leadership. Everybody that submitted a nomination is committed to advancing civic engagement in contexts where freedom are under threat, innovating to strengthen public participation, accountability, and democratic values, as well as inspiring each one of us to join in international cooperation from local to global levels. So to you, our Corporation Canada members in the audience, we want to thank you so much for your efforts across Canada and worldwide. Your work exemplifies the values we celebrate tonight. And to everyone joining us, whether from the sector or the public, we invite you to be inspired by these stories of courage and collaboration. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this, Nodine. And before I further introduce the event and pay honor to the land on which I am joining you today, please note that we have interpretation for this event. You can click on the globe icon below on your screen and select either English or French. Veuillez noter que nous disposons d'un service d'interprétation pour l'événement. Vous pouvez cliquer sur l'icône du globe ci-dessous sur votre écran et sélectionner la langue de votre choix, l'anglais ou le français. I'd like to express my gratitude to the Algonquin Anishinaabe people who continue to live and care for the unceded and unsurrendered lands from which I join you today. Corporation Canada recognizes the enduring presence and resilience of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, who have been the original keepers of this land for generations. We express our gratitude for the elders of yesterday and acknowledge the importance of uplifting and amplifying the voice of elders today in our desire to uphold the sacred relationship between Turtle Island and its occupants for future generations in our collective journey toward not only reconciliation, but Indigenous inclusion and decolonization here at Corporation Canada. And we invite you to do the same. Over to you, Nodine. I'm sorry, Nodine.
Oh, my apologies.
Yo,
My
you.
apologies. As we reflect on communities that contribute to the great land that we now call Canada, as well as the entire world, I also want to emphasize that we are coming together during Black History Month and acknowledge the harm that colonial, racist, and oppressive practices have caused globally in the name of development, including within the work of civil society. Ceux et celles d'entre nous qui s'engagent dans la coopération internationale et l'aide humanitaire doivent entamer une profonde réflexion, évoluer d'ores et déjà dans leurs pratiques et prendre des mesures concrètes pour faire mieux. We recognize that building an equitable world begins with understanding, respect, and solidarity, and that this is an ongoing commitment that needs to be continuously renewed. So we look forward to continuing our efforts toward decolonization, dismantling structures of oppression, championing equity, as well as amplifying marginalized voices every single day. Thank you. Nefa, back to you.
Thank you so much, Nadine. And to kick off our Cooperation Canada Awards ceremony, we are honored to welcome a leader whose work reflects a deep commitment to international development and community service. We are fortunate to welcome the Honourable Randeep Sarai, Secretary of State for International Development. Honourable Randeep Sarai was first elected in 2015 to represent the riding of Surrey Centre. He completed his undergraduate degree in political science at University of British Columbia and later earned a law degree at Queen's University. After his studies, he began practicing law before transitioning into politics. Tout au long de sa carrière, il s'est profondément investi dans des initiatives visant à améliorer la qualité de vie des communautés mal desservies. Et sa passion pour le service communautaire se reflète dans son rôle de cofondateur de VIRSA, une organisation qui soutient les jeunes et renforce les familles, ainsi que dans son soutien à des initiatives communautaires de prévention de la criminalité et dans ses activités de collecte de fonds pour lutter contre la polio, dans son aide à la construction d'un temple local et dans l'organisation de collecte alimentaire. Ministre Sarai, la parole est à vous.
Hello, everyone. Happy International Development Week. My thanks to Cooperation Canada for hosting today. I welcome the opportunity to speak to the organizations who make our international development community what it is. It's a principled, practical, compassionate, and deeply committed to reducing poverty around the world. And this year's theme, prosperity through partnership, could not be more timely. We're meeting at a time, at a moment of true global complexity around the world. Needs are rising, conflicts are escalating, climate change is accelerating, and unfortunately, budgets are tightening. But as the Prime Minister Carney said at Davos, we are in the midst of a rupture. We need to be honest about that reality, and we need to be clear about what it demands of us. So shared and sustainable prosperity can't be achieved by any one country or institution alone. It must be built through partnerships that combine strengths and focus on results. Partnerships that build on our long-standing efforts to reduce poverty, fight infectious disease, advance gender equality, and protect the environment. Partnerships that create the opportunity for mutual prosperity and economic growth. In a world of growing uncertainty, cooperation is our strongest tool. That's always been Canada's approach to international development, and it's where Cooperation Canada's members and civil society play such an important role. You bring deep local knowledge, long-standing relationships, and the trust of communities that no single actor could build alone. And you understand that development today isn't about doing more of everything. It's about doing the right things in the right place with the right partners. It's about ensuring that every dollar we invest delivers real results, more resilient communities, and economic opportunities. And at the same time, we know that development doesn't happen in isolation. Trade, investment, innovation, diplomacy, all shape development outcomes. That's why Canada is committed to working across silos, connecting development with economic opportunity and humanitarian response with long-term recovery. When societies become healthier, more stable, and resilient, that means a more prosperous world for us all. I've seen it firsthand, whether it's providing seeds and fertilizers to hard-hit farming communities in Vietnam, or helping women-led small businesses get access to financing in Indonesia. These investments have clear mutual benefits. When strengthening our economy and diversifying our trade are our top priorities, we need to set the stage for more development partners to become trading partners. Friends, in today's complex world, international development is about being clear-eyed about what works and committing to that focus. And here's what we know. Global instability doesn't stop at borders. Dignity and opportunity should not depend on where you're born. Empowering women and girls is one of the smartest investments we can make. Resilience, economic, social, and environmental, is built over time. and shared prosperity is in our collective interests. That's why we work so closely with civil society, the private sector, multilateral institutions, and local communities. Progress is possible step by step, project by project, partnership by partnership. This week, we recognize the people at the heart of our international development sector. Canadians can be proud of the thousands of people whose efforts help reduce global poverty, advance equality, and create opportunities. This year, Cooperation Canada will recognize leadership in protecting civic spaces to enable international cooperation, honoring individuals and organizations who are advancing civic action, aid workers, volunteers, and fundraisers, diaspora community leaders, university students, professional and retirees, neighbors, colleagues, and friends. Congratulations to you all. You are true examples of what is possible, and Canada and the world are better because of you. Thank you and merci.
Merci beaucoup, ministre Sarai. C'est un honneur de vous avoir parmi nous. Alors ce soir, nous célébrons notre secteur avec 3 prix. Premièrement, on a le prix Karen Takacs, décerné à une championne de l'égalité de genre dans notre secteur. Ensuite, on a les prix Innovation Impact, dont un prix individuel, un prix organisationnel qui sont présentés par Coopération Canada, Entraide universitaire mondiale du Canada et les administrateurs du prix Louis Perrenban. Donc maintenant, je vais passer la parole à Catherine Leclerc, chargée de cours à l'Université de Winnipeg et lauréate du prix Karen Takacs 2024. Elle va nous en dire plus à propos du prix. Katrina, la parole est à vous.
Merci beaucoup, Nodem. Bonjour tout le monde. Folks, Karen Takacs was a cherished and visionary leader in the Canadian international cooperation community. For more than 20 years, she worked tirelessly to advance the rights of women and girls locally, nationally, and globally. Karen was known for her ability to bring people together through encouragement, generosity, and a wonderful sense of humor, and for leading a way that lifted others up. Coopération Canada a créé le prix Karen Takacs pour honorer son héritage et célébrer le leadership féministe et collaboratif qu'elle a incarné tout au long de sa vie, notamment pendant son mandat de présidente du conseil d'administration de Coopération Canada. Ce prix est devenu un symbole féministe et un symbole de collaboration, de défense des droits, de mentorat et de résilience dans notre secteur. Each year, the award highlights an aspect of leadership that reflects both Karen's values and the needs in our collective sector. This year, the focus is on intersectional feminist leadership that protects and reclaims civic space, especially in contexts where gender justice movements are currently under increasing threats. The award committee, made up of colleagues, friends of Karen, and past recipients like myself, have had a very difficult decision to make. As always, we receive extraordinary nominations from across the country. The accomplishments, the courage, and the creativity of nominees made it incredibly challenging to choose just one individual to celebrate and highlight. But the committee this time was unanimous and deeply proud in selecting this year's honoree. So it's my pleasure to introduce the recipient of the 2025 Karen Takacs Award, Frédérique Chabot, Executive Director of Action Canada for Sexual Health and Rights. Fred brings more than 20 years of unwavering commitment to sexual reproductive health and rights. She began in frontline HIV outreach, supporting women affected by HIV/AIDS, before moving into health promotion and national advocacy. She went on to serve as the National Advocacy Coordinator for the Sex Worker Rights Movement, helping lead organizing during the landmark Canada versus Bedford Supreme Court case. At Action Canada, Fred has helped shape and expand frontline access to care, growing the emergency aid program for those facing barriers to abortion and leading the access line for many years. She has also expanded partnerships across the sector and across different sectors, sustained capacity building activities, and led national advocacy. Fred's approach is simple but powerful. It's about listening first and then acting later. She brings forward the stories and data from people accessing services, women and gender diverse people facing barriers, and translates those realities into policy and advocacy asks with decision makers who might otherwise never hear those voices. Ce qui m'a particulièrement marqué et qui a marqué le comité, c'est la capacité de Fred à bâtir des coalitions au-delà des différences et son leadership féministe collaboratif qui consiste à rassembler les gens. Fred a établi des liens entre la santé et les droits sexuels et reproductifs, la justice pour les migrants, la lutte contre les changements climatiques et les droits des personnes trans et queer au niveau local, national et transnational, démontrant ainsi l'interdépendance de nos luttes diverses. Fred a également aidé les coalitions à adopter des outils de transformation narrative fondés sur des données probantes, dont le code narratif race-classe, afin de renforcer la communication du secteur. Fred est conseillère de confiance auprès de plusieurs équipes ministérielles et départementales du gouvernement du Canada, ainsi que d'intervenantes de secteurs de la santé et de la santé sexuelle. Fred utilise son réseau pour faciliter l'accès à d'autres personnes et redistribuer le pouvoir de manière concrète. Par exemple, lors de la conception du deuxième appel de financement du Fonds pour la santé sexuelle et reproductive par Santé Canada, Fred a défendu des organisations plus petites et moins connues qui accomplissent un travail essentiel dont plusieurs ont par la suite été invités et financés. Pendant la pandémie de la COVID-19, alors que les flux de financement étaient perturbés, Fred a également contribué à maintenir le soutien aux coalitions transnationales et aux partenaires des pays du Sud afin qu'ils puissent participer au processus de reddition de comptes internationaux. In moments of pressure on civic space, such as recent anti-choice media push, Fred mobilized a sector-wide response that shifted the narrative, protecting those most impacted and reinforcing the conditions communities need to keep advocating. Across every context, Fred models collaborative, intersectional feminist leadership, listening deeply, sharing power, building durable alliances, and strengthening civic space for women, girls, and gender diverse folks. In this way, Fred embodies exactly what Taryn Takacs championed: collaborative, courage, generosity, and steadfast belief in collective leadership. So it's my tremendous pleasure to be able to pass the baton and to present the 2025 Taryn Takacs Award to Frédérique Chabot. Félicitations. And over to you for a few words, Fred.
Well, thank you. First, before I begin, I want to offer my deep thanks to you, Katrina, for making me squirm through this, and to the whole team at Cooperation Canada for stewarding the Taryn Takacs Award with such care. It means a great deal to receive this recognition during International Development Week. I'm excited to see Minister Sarai here. Thank you for joining us. This is a moment that certainly reminds us that international cooperation is not just about institutions or funding, but about people, relationships. There's so many friends in the room, so many colleagues, so many people I admire and whose work had such a deep impact on me. And the civic spaces that allow us to do that imagining and that building of a more just world together. So thank you deeply for this honor. Thank you for choosing this particular theme, especially right now, as Minister Sarai was pointing out. Receiving this award after Taryn Takacs and grounded in the idea of protecting civic space, particularly as Action Canada's work focuses on sexual and reproductive rights at a time of deep divide on these issues, is really moving to me and really meaningful. Civic space is not an abstract concept for me or my colleagues, and it's not simply a policy term. It's a lived, at this time, fragile and hard-won reality, and one that exists only because people keep choosing to show up for one another and for the greater good, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's risky, even when it would be easier to retreat into our own corners. Although it is very fun to work with all of you here. So there's definitely hardships, but there's also a lot of pleasure in working together. So if the last few years have taught us anything is that we are living in a time of splintering. Katrina, you were walking us through some of that. Same for Minister Sarai in terms of the rising tensions in the world. Movements are under pressure. Trust is under pressure. Our attention is fragmented, which is why my newfound interest in communications and public engagement. Our language is weaponized, and polarization has become both a political strategy and an organizing obstacle that we've had to contend with. Civic Space doesn't just close because it closes when we stop seeing one another as part of the same ecosystems, when we lose the muscle of collaboration across difference, issues, and movements. So if there's one thing I want to talk about today, and I'm really grateful for the platform, it's this. Movement building is at the heart of what will carry us through these times. I'm not even going to say uncertain times or unprecedented times, because I think we've said it too much in the last few years. Over the past 20 years, thank you for the retrospective, Katrina, I've worked in community health, HIV/AIDS, sex worker rights, sexual and reproductive health and rights, feminist advocacy, and international cooperation. And I've learned that the most resilient movements are not necessarily the loudest or the most process heavy or the most centralized. They are the ones that are nimble, relational, and anchored in shared values. They're built by people who understand that no single issue exists in isolation and that no one is disposable, and also that we can have fun doing this. At home or in the rest of the world, sexual rights, reproductive agency, and gender justice are deeply connected to labor rights, to healthcare systems, to environmental conditions, to economic security, to migration, to democracy, to a sense of belonging, and a sense of stable access to what we need to take care of ourselves and our families. It's about who gets care, who gets safety, and who gets to show up in public life and who is pushed out of it. So when civic space is under threat, the instinct can be to protect our own silo, to defend our own mandate, to hold tightly to information or resources in a moment of scarcity, because it might secure us the next source of funding that will keep us alive for another few minutes. It can sharpen our message until it excludes anything that feels complicated, and it can keep us in little in-groups. But what I've seen again and again, and this is that our power grows when we resist that instinct. Coalition building across difference is not a branding exercise, it's a discipline. It requires listening more than speaking, which I'll admit I'm still practicing. It requires decentering ourselves and our own lens, choosing abundance over scarcity, even when there's only crumbs. And always paying attention to power, especially to who is being asked to compromise the most. It also requires humility, the willingness to be wrong, to learn, and to let movements evolve beyond our own leadership. And one of the greatest privilege of my work has been learning alongside colleagues, many of them in this room. Feminist networks, researchers, frontline providers, global partners, community advocates who refuse false choices between pragmatism and principle or between strategy and solidarity. Everyone has taught me that protecting civic space is not just about resisting attacks. It's about actively creating the world we want to be in and the conditions where more people can participate meaningfully. That means building leadership that is collective rather than heroic. It means sharing analysis, not hoarding it. It means designing strategies that can adapt when the terrain shifts, because it always does. And right now, we are facing coordinated anti-rights and anti-solidarity movements that are sophisticated, well-resourced, and deeply invested in polarization, into scarcity and division. Their goal is not only to roll back rights, but to fracture alliances, to convince us that our struggles are incompatible, that solidarity is naive, and that complexity is weakness. And our response cannot simply be louder opposition, but to focus on stronger connective tissue. And that is where international cooperation matters more than ever, not as a top-down project, but as a practice of mutual learning, shared defense, and collective imagination. The challenges we face do not respect borders, and neither can our movements, and this is the space where we get to celebrate that. I want to be very clear about something. Any impacts associated with Action Canada's work or mine is the result of working with others, often behind the scenes, often in rooms where the real work is slow, relational, invisible. And the most meaningful leadership moments rarely look like leadership at all. They look like convening, translating, making space, holding tension long enough for trust to form. And I get to shout out Cooperations Canada for building those spaces for many of us. So if there's anything that this award represents to me, it's not an endpoint, it's a reminder and a call to action. A reminder that civic space is something we make together or not at all. That movements survive not because they are pure, but because they are generous. And that in time of fragmentation, choosing connection is a political act. Thank you so much for everyone who participated in choosing me, putting together this application, for celebrating me today. Thank you for protecting the conditions that allow civil society to do this work. And thank you to everyone here who continues to believe very stubbornly and courageously these days that another way of working together is possible and actually vital. So thank you so much.
Merci, merci et félicitations Fred. Merci Katrina et au comité Karen Takacs de continuer à soutenir ce processus d'attribution. We will now turn our attention to the Innovation and Impact Awards. I'd like to hand it over to Steve Mason, Chief Executive Officer of World University Service of Canada, who will present the individual award and this year's winner. Steve Mason, over to you.
Merci, Nefa. Je suis très heureux de remettre cette année le prix Louis Perrenbaum de l'innovation et l'impact. Ce prix rend hommage à l'héritage remarquable de Louis Perrenbaum, une personne qui a profondément marqué le secteur du développement international au Canada. Par sa vision, son esprit de collaboration et son approche innovante, Louis Perrenbaum a contribué à transformer notre manière de travailler. Ancien directeur général de l'EUMC et figure de proue de développement international au sein du gouvernement du Canada, il a su bâtir des ponts entre la société civile et les pouvoirs publics, ouvrant ainsi de nouvelles perspectives de coopération à l'échelle mondiale. Aujourd'hui, nous célébrons ce même esprit de courage et de transformation. Car l'innovation ne se limite pas à la technologie ou aux tendances. Elle réside aussi dans la capacité d'imaginer de nouvelles façons de protéger les droits et l'espace civique et de défendre la liberté d'apprendre, de s'exprimer, de participer et bien sûr de rêver. In this year's award, we are honored to celebrate a person who does more than stand firm. We celebrate someone who builds new spaces quietly, bravely, and against all odds. This year, the Louis Perrenbaum Award for Innovation and Impact goes to Dr. Lauryn Oates. Lauryn has achieved something truly extraordinary. In Afghanistan, where civic space for women and girls has been nearly erased, she has created a virtual sanctuary for learning through the Danesh Academy. She understood early that technology is not just a delivery mechanism for education for Afghan girls, it is a lifeline. By providing thousands of Afghan learners with rights-based education in their local languages, she ensures that knowledge, opportunity, and hope remain within reach, even under one of the world's most repressive regimes. But Lauryn's impact goes far beyond a single platform. As the executive director of Right to Learn Afghanistan, she has spent more than 2 decades working tirelessly to defend the rights to education for Afghan girls and women, often quietly, always steadfastly. I personally had the pleasure of meeting Lauryn for the first time in Kabul over 20 years ago, and I was as impressed then as I am now with her commitment and impact. Her work bridges community-level action with international law, global advocacy, and policy influence. She has engaged persistently with the United Nations and Canadian partners to ensure that the rights of Afghan women and girls remain a priority, despite efforts to silence them. In a time when civic space is closing, Lauryn has pushed it open, innovatively, strategically, and with unwavering commitment. She exemplifies the kind of leadership that this award was created to celebrate. It is my great honor to present this year's Lewis Perenbaum Award to Dr. Lauryn Oates. Please join me in congratulating her. Over to you, Lauryn.
Right. Thanks so much. Bonjour tout le monde. Hello. This is a real honor. And squirmy is also a great word for it. But I do just want to express my gratitude for the recognition and spotlight on the work I'm doing and the work of Right to Learn Afghanistan, which some of you might know better as Canadian Women for Women in Afghanistan. We changed our name a couple of years ago. It's very humbling, in particular, to be associated in any way with the name of Lewis Perenbaum. Of course, because he was someone who brought to life new ways of realizing access to education, what I'm also aspiring to do, but also because he was such a bridge builder and a believer in cooperation and partnerships. So I wanted to say a couple of things on that, on cooperation, the animating ethos of the sponsoring organizations of this award, and because it's become quite pivotal to my efforts currently. Though I'm pretty sure if my parents were here, they'd probably insist that being cooperative was not my natural state, but we learn and grow, right? And I'm grateful to have this moment to reflect on my efforts. Though at the same time, I have to say, if my life's purpose were a mountain, it feels very much like I'm still scaling the first side at this point, pretty far off from the summit. And 5 years ago, when girls and women in Afghanistan were barred from classrooms for a second time, it felt like sliding right back down to the base and starting all over again. The reality is that the problem I concern myself with is very much an unsolved one. And anytime I'd think of the sheer scale of this problem, when I'd try to quantify the suffering, count the number of girls and women out of school, the people at risk, the life and death consequences of gender apartheid, I'd come up against the unavoidable reality that no one organization can make a meaningful dent in this problem alone. We have to work together. It's not a matter of being a nice ideal, it's just necessity. So that reality has pushed much of my recent work toward coalition building, trying to foster communication, connection, and coordination within the ecosystem of organizations providing educational programming to women and girls in Afghanistan so that we can do more together than we could apart. But goodness, coalition building is hard. I know that's not news to Cooperation Canada and others here, but very worth it, right? When the goals of our individual organizations that we're working towards cannot be achieved without collective effort, then cooperation has to become part of leadership itself, part of how we design our systems. I think you heard that from Frédérique as well, and we didn't plan that. It just has to become part of the impulse of an organization to see our efforts within a larger web and to think about how our efforts can strengthen that web. And crisis has a way of clarifying this. Just as humans have genes that are activated by our environment, epigenetics, organizations too can have a cooperation on or off switch. And in moments like the current crisis in Afghanistan, when girls and women are denied education on a mass scale, cooperation becomes essential to impact. When that switch is activated, bridges are built between institutions, clear messages start to emerge for policymakers about what needs to be done. There's a shared understanding about what needs to change. So the only way there's a shot of scaling that mountain is through cooperative effort. And this was evident in the impact of Lewis Perenbaum's efforts. It's evident in the work of Cooperation Canada, in the partnerships fostered between Canada and the Global South by WUSC, the movement building that the previous speaker alluded to, and it's what we're learning in the movement for the right to education and in the space I'm working in among the ecosystem of organizations that have stepped into the void to restore schooling, where in the case of Afghanistan, the state relinquished its duty to educate women and girls, and this work has fallen exclusively to civil society. Cooperation is also what I'm privileged to see at play every day at Right to Learn Afghanistan, where I do nothing alone yet get much undue credit thanks to the talent and dedication of our extraordinary volunteers across the country, an absolutely world-class board of directors, and a special shout out to our recently former director, Fawad Akbari, who's here, and to all of our staff team. I'm mindful in particular that my colleagues in Afghanistan are not just working on, but living through gender apartheid. Their courage as they deliver education at great personal risk is often necessarily unseen, but I can assure you is astoundingly impactful. So I share this recognition with all of my colleagues in Afghanistan and in Canada, and am grateful that in recognizing our efforts, you're shining light on the great injustice that is the discriminatory denial of the right to education endured by millions of women and girls. It's a situation we think of as an emergency. And as we looked at what we need in place to adapt to this crisis, and in my own continuing fumbling around at the base of the mountain, it's become clear that one of the most powerful tools to wield in responding to an emergency is cooperation, even when it means climbing a bunch of little mountains around the big mountain. I'm so grateful to be among you today to celebrate together, and so very appreciative of this recognition, and my congratulations to the other awardees. I feel energized for the climb ahead. I'm lacing up my boots and privileged to be part of this country's strong, cooperative, and principled community of international cooperation organizations. Thank you so much. Merci.
Wonderful. All this is so inspiring. J'en ai des frissons. Congratulations, Dr. Oates. Thank you, Steve, for your introductions, as well as the team at WUSC and the trustees of the Louis Springbaum Award for all you put into ensuring the success of this award. We now turn to the final award of the evening, the Innovation and Impact Awards in honor of Louis Springbaum Organizational Award. Nodin.
Thank you so much, Nefa, and congratulations again to you, Fred and Dr. Oates. Now, here to provide some background about the organizational award is a member of the Corporation Canada Board of Directors who also chairs the board's membership committee. Please help me welcome Monsieur Taylor Lewis, President and CEO of Food for the Hungry Canada. Monsieur, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you so much, Nefa. I'm pleased to be here today representing the Corporation Canada Membership Committee. One of the key responsibilities of that committee is selecting the recipient of the Innovation and Impact Award. And it is a privilege to have been participating in that process. This year, once again, we received an outstanding slate of nominees, each demonstrating creativity and commitment to advancing international cooperation. And for the 2025-2026 cycle, the awards spotlight bold, forward-thinking approaches that protect civic space and enable international cooperation. This theme reflects a growing urgency. Without widespread freedom to participate in public life, progress towards inclusive cooperation and humanitarian action cannot be sustained. Innovation remains central to the organizational prize. And what do we mean by innovation? Our definition is rooted in the Whistler principles to accelerate innovation for cooperation impact. Concrete solutions such as new technologies, business models, policy practices, approaches, partnerships, and insights that effectively address identified cooperation challenges, barriers to empowerment to improve the lives of the most vulnerable. So today we celebrate an organization that exemplifies these values, not only through creativity and impact, but by championing community participation and organizing as a cornerstone of international cooperation. And so this year's winner is the SecDev Foundation. J'ai maintenant le grand privilège à vous présenter notre lauréat de prix organisationnel de l'innovation et de l'impact de 2025, le SecDev Foundation. So before I invite them to say a few words, I'd like to share why the committee selected them. This year's organizational award honors innovations that protect civic space so people can organize, advocate, and participate safely and meaningfully. The committee was unanimous in selecting the SecDev Foundation because their practice aligns tightly and measurably with this theme. Community-driven digital resilience. SecDev works with civil society, women, youth, and independent media, especially in high-risk and fragile contexts, to strengthen safe participation in public life. SecDev's work shows a strong emphasis on knowledge transfer and locally led development, ensuring communities have ownership over the tools and solutions they use. Their approach has adapted to local contexts, using appropriate, accessible technology to support community organizing, engagement, and participation, key dimensions of civic space. A notable strength is their model of training and mentoring local digital safety champions who act as embedded community-based resources, supporting peers, guiding organizations, and sustaining digital resilience long after specific projects end. Their leadership in the digital resilience space was commended as timely, impactful, and directly supportive of civic freedoms and democratic participation. Partner voices underscore this impact. The Association of Detainees and the Missing of Sednaya Prison shared that SecDev's Salamatek project provided emergency response for urgent digital safety cases involving arrested, detained, and disappeared individuals, critical support where any breach could endanger lives. CSA's Family Association credited Salamatek with critical technical and emergency assistance and disinformation campaigns and online attacks targeting victims' families. SecDev also connects evidence to action and scales it. In Myanmar, local researchers supported since 2024 produced 27 studies after the 2021 coup, shaping understanding of human trafficking-linked scam operations, gendered online violence, and journalists' digital safety. Across 16 Middle East and North Africa countries, SecDev and partners co-produced nearly 30 studies on digital violence against women, catalyzing policy reform, programming, media coverage, and a durable regional knowledge community. They also drive inclusive innovation, co-creating the first ever Arabic Sign Language Digital Safety Dictionary with 20+ deaf specialists across 9 countries, ensuring accessible learning. And they translate research into frontline action. From digital resilience for women leaders in Jordan ahead of the 2026 local elections to post-earthquake digital safety support in Syria, to community-led movements against digital gender-based violence. In short, the SecDev Foundation combines innovation with durable, locally led impact, precisely what it takes to protect civic space and enable international cooperation. It is now my pleasure to invite Deirdre Collins, Executive Director, to accept the award on behalf of the SecDev Foundation and to share a few words.
Thank you so very much, Musa. That was really very, very powerful to hear that that overview. Thank you so very much. This is really a huge honor for us. Very special indeed to have our impact recognized in this way by our Canadian peers whom we're just getting to really know. We haven't been too active in the Canadian space, but we're new members to Cooperation Canada. So we're looking forward to coordinating and cooperating with you all as we go forward into the future. Of course, our organization is our people. So I'm accepting this award on behalf of our incredible staff who are here in Canada, as well as hundreds really of field team members and local partners, past and present, who defend civic space in their own communities every day. Communities that are often shaped by conflict, fragility, and authoritarian closure. It has been an immense privilege, really, to walk alongside very brave change makers and to learn from them how we can better support what it is that they do. We began our efforts in Syria in 2012, initially providing emergency assistance to human rights activists whose efforts and often lives were really at risk. I still remember one of our early calls from an activist's wife. Her husband had disappeared at a checkpoint. Please, she cried, please deactivate his Facebook account now. Well, closing his Facebook account, this would not save her husband. She knew that. We knew that. But it could protect everyone else who is connected to him on Facebook, his fellow activists, his friends, his colleagues. From those early days, we really came to learn something simple but powerful, which is digital resilience is really essential to protecting civic space, especially in difficult contexts. This is true for activists and organizations who rely on digital tools for their work, but it's also true for some of the most vulnerable people, like women heads of households in displaced camps, who rely on phones for survival information. But those same phones can also be vectors of harm, allow them to be targeted by egregious digital harms. In today's world, as some of our colleagues speaking earlier has said, so much of the freedom to organize, to speak, to seek help, to learn, to participate in public life, so much of it now runs through phones, through platforms, through messaging channels. When those spaces are weaponized through surveillance, harassment, scams, disinformation, people don't just lose their accounts or money, they actually lose agency. So we see this in our work. For example, when a small community organization falls victim to a phishing attack and loses vital resources. We see it when female journalists are harassed into silence, or when the head of a girls' school is falsely shamed online and families stop sending their daughters to school. We see it when targeted disinformation campaigns spark new fear and violence in vulnerable communities that had been looking for a way out of conflict. When these things happen, civic space contracts. But the inverse is also true. When people gain digital skills and resilience, agency can expand. Women journalists band together and push online gender-based violence onto the public agenda, as we're seeing in Jordan. At-risk organizations learn to protect themselves online and then help their peers to do the same, as we've seen firsthand across the 20-some countries in which we work. And new youth leaders who learn how to verify what they see online, well, they can help their communities respond when dangerous falsehoods threaten to divide. These lasting impacts are why we have come to see digital resilience as sort of a basic rights infrastructure, sort of like safe housing or clean water even. With each new community that we engage, we usually start by listening to understand the tools people rely on, the threats they face, the information they need to protect, the opportunities that they want to pursue. And then we co-create practical solutions with them so they can safely use digital tools and spaces to strengthen their work and impact. This award carries the name of Louis Perenbaum, and it is indeed an honor for our organization and all of our folks to be part of this. Louis Perenbaum believed in people, especially in young people, as agents of change. And that spirit, which is opening space for others to lead, is something that we continually strive to embody in our work. So I'm accepting this honor on behalf of our teams and our partners who keep showing up in very, very hard places, and also see it as a renewed commitment to really continued strengthening local leadership and defending that civic space that makes so much else possible. Thanks a lot.
Magnifique. Félicitations encore au SecDev Foundation. And I would like to thank Corporation Canada's committee membership committee for its ongoing involvement in the award process. We are grateful for you. And over to you, Nodine.
Merci encore, Nefa, and congratulations again to SecDev Foundation for the work that you do, International Corporation. Et maintenant, pour conclure notre cérémonie, j'aimerais inviter Shannon Kindorney, qui est directrice générale adjointe de Coopération Canada. Shannon, la parole est à vous.
Merci beaucoup. C'est un plaisir d'être ici avec tout le monde. Félicitations à Fred, Lauryn et SecDev Foundation. Chaque année, j'ai l'opportunité à prendre la parole à la fin. Et c'est toujours, je peux dire, c'est toujours quand même assez facile. We always have these amazing, amazing awardees who make my job of closing out this space so easy. And so a huge thank you for your words, your inspiring words, your wisdom, your experiences, and what you've accomplished. I guess just tying together a few things as we close out. The minister started by talking about how this group is principled, compassionate, and committed. And Fred reminded us that civic space is not abstract. It's a lived reality. Whether we're talking about gender apartheid, whether we're talking about the activists and organizations that rely on the digital world to organize, to advance their collective actions, civic space allows us to imagine. But that same space can also be what is constrained, it can be weaponized, and it can be used against us. It doesn't just close because. It's when we lose the muscle of collaboration. And every one of the speakers tonight spoke so much about the importance of collaboration, about the idea of movement building that will carry us through, the idea that no one organization can make a dent on their own, as Lauryn reminded us, and about the possibilities of taking perhaps the same opportunities that might harm us, but to bring us together, such as Deidre, the example of women journalists in Jordan who are challenging gender-based violence by bringing the issue into the public sphere and using online tools to advance their agenda. Coalition building is hard. We at Cooperation Canada know that. Our speakers have spoken about that. They've shared with us the importance of the listening, of the opening space for others, and needing to see our efforts within a larger web. The only way to scale the mountain is through cooperative action. So I hope you'll all join me in toasting, making a political choice, a political act, and choosing connection as we move through this moment together. So congratulations to our awardees, and thank you all for joining us tonight. Cheers. And with that, as many of you may know, we are also really excited to be hosting the Ottawa Civic Space Summit in April. We'll have a chance to highlight the amazing work of our winners, our award winners, organizations that are contributing to this important work. So we'll look forward to seeing you all there. And please do reach out if you're interested in engaging with us. But, I know the folks in this room are deeply committed to this work, and it's such a pleasure to share space with you. So thank you, everyone, and wishing you all a lovely evening as we end on time. So thank you all. Good night.